Alright, YouTube, so we're back, of course, with some Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Today we're here to talk about Part 2 and where we think it's going to end. I've kind of touched on this before in a different video, but not a dedicated video about it. It was just kind of something I mentioned. Now, before we hop into it, we've been on like an every other day upload schedule for a while now, simply because there's just not that much news or information for remakes, so we kind of space out our videos to make them kind of last until we start getting substantial information. But the video we uploaded yesterday was supposed to be uploaded the night before, obviously. But by the time I got done editing, processing, and uploading, it was like 1 or 2 a.m. my time, so I just kind of scheduled it for like kind of earlier in the day yesterday. So I figured we'd put out a video today to kind of catch us back up, so to speak, because we would have had a video today. Anyways, let's get into it. Now, the video I mentioned earlier was the Cosmo Canyon video. I'll have it linked in the description if you want to check it out. But the TLDR on that video was that Remake Part 2 pretty much has to include Cosmo Canyon for Red 13 character development. We got him at the end of Remake Part 1. He wasn't a controllable character. We didn't get a whole lot of story for him. And since he's going to be a playable character in Remake Part 2, Cosmo Canyon pretty much has to be in the game, because that's where he gets his biggest story piece. But also in that video, I did mention how I don't think Cosmo Canyon is a good stopping off point. I did have like 1 or 2 people disagree with me in the comments, but we really just go there for Red 13's story. That's kind of it, at least the first time. We get to meet Bugenhagen, who is an important character, but we're really there just for character development for Red 13. He gets to see that his dad died a hero protecting the village, and decides to join us on our journey to protect the planet. That's kind of the TLDR on that, but the point is, it's a big moment for him as a character, but not exactly the kind of moment you end an entire video game on. But right after the Cosmo Canyon segment is when we actually get to visit Nibelheim, and thematically this would make the most sense to end the game on. The story will come full circle, because more than likely, Remake Part 2 is going to open up with the Nibelheim incident flashback, the Calm flashback. This has been speculated on for a while now. This is what a lot of people think is going to happen, and if that is the case, then from a narrative perspective, I think it makes the most sense to open up with this and end with us actually getting to Nibelheim. The game opens up with Cloud recalling the events of the Nibelheim incident, where Sephiroth killed everybody in his hometown and burned it to the ground, but at the end of the game, we actually get to Nibelheim and see that the town is just fine, and this calls into question whether or not Cloud is remembering stuff accurately, whether or not the Nibelheim incident ever actually happened, or of course, whether or not Shinra is covering it up. Now, most of us out there that are interested in the remake project already know the Final Fantasy VII story, so this isn't a huge, massive revelation to us, but if you set that aside and you look at it from the perspective of somebody that doesn't know the story, and of course they might also change some stuff, this is a great piece of storytelling, and it's a huge revelation to somebody that doesn't know the actual story. Now, I don't know if you exactly end it in Nibelheim, or if you do the Mountain to Bell stuff, or maybe even go up to Rocket Town where you can meet Sid and get the Tiny Bronco, and maybe the game ends there before it really opens up the world where we get a vehicle and we can travel around. But you could absolutely end the game in Nibelheim. There's some major revelations there. For one, just the town being intact still, but you also have a run-in with Sephiroth in the basement of the Shinra Manor, and you get to learn that, Jenova wasn't an ancient. She is a calamity from the skies, an alien that fell to the planet. And we also get to learn about Reunion. And we also get to meet the character of Vincent, who, in the remake, I'm assuming, I think most of us are in agreement that he's not going to be an optional character. He's too important to the overall story. I mean, he has history with Lucretia, who is Sephiroth's biological mother. I've seen it speculated on Reddit and stuff, like maybe he could be a boss when it comes to remake, which I think would be kind of interesting, at least when we first run into him, because even in the original game, he's kind of pissed off that we wake him up. So I think it'd be kind of cool in the remake if we wake him up, he's pissed off, we got to fight him in all of his different forms and shit. That'd be kind of interesting. We have no idea if something like that's even going to happen, but it is an interesting topic and idea. But regardless, we're going to get to meet Vincent in Nibelheim. He's going to join our team. It might be a Red 13 scenario where he's not actually a playable character. He just kind of joins us for the final chapters again, which would set Vincent and Sid up for the next game. But by the time we reach Nibelheim, we should have already had Yuffie and Kate Sith join our team. Now, there are people out there that think Remake Part 2 is going to go up to the point of Aerith's death, and that is honestly a fantastic way to end the game. Like, to end the game on a big, major character death, it's a hell of a cliffhanger, and we got to wait till the next game. The biggest issue here with that is all the stuff between the Midgar segment and that exact moment, because even if the game goes up to, like, let's say Nibelheim, you have in between Midgar and Nibelheim, you have Calm, Chocobo Ranch, Mithril Mines, Fort Condor, Junon, Costa del Sol, Mount Kurel, Gold Saucer, Gungaga, and Cosmo Canyon, and then Nibelheim. Like, that right there is already a shit ton of locations, a big chunk of the world map, and if you go up to the events of Aerith's death, you add in even more locations. And actually, I forgot a couple locations. You also have the cargo ship, and of course, Kurel Prison, which are pretty much their own locations and would probably have their own dedicated chapters. But let's say that Part 2 did go up to the events of Aerith's death. That would also factor in Mountain to Bell, Rocket Town, us going back to the Gold Saucer, the Temple of the Ancients, Bone Village, and the Forgotten Capital, and all the new locations that the Tiny Bronco would allow us to go to, like Wutai. Not to mention all the way from Calm to the Forgotten Capital, all the new content they want to add, whether that's new locations, quests, characters, whatever. And to be honest, it's hard to even believe that they would go up to the events of Nibelheim, given how much locations are in between there. What it really comes down to is how much they're going to expand other locations versus how they did Midgar. Because they made the Midgar segment into its own, 30-hour or so video game. How much are they going to expand other locations like Junon and Calm and stuff? How important are they going to be? How long we're going to be in those locations in the game? 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? What are we doing? There's just really no way of knowing how they're going to handle this stuff, man. But for sure, Junon needs the Midgard treatment to some degree. It doesn't need to be its own, 30-hour game, but it's the only other major city in the entire world, so it definitely needs, to be expanded a lot. I think from a storytelling perspective, Nibelheim makes the most sense to end the second game on, but from Calm to Nibelheim, if you include Corel Prison and the cargo ship, that's 14 different locations. So I don't know if they're going to how much they're going to expand those locations, and if they can fit that all into one game. But at the same time, if Game 2 ends at Nibelheim, Aerith's death happens not long after that, right? Just a handful of locations from Mount Nibel to the Forgotten Capital. And I don't think that Game 3 would end at the Forgotten Capital. There's just not enough content there to sustain an entire game, so they'd have to go past Aerith's death in Game 3, which would put her death happen in mid to early game, and I just don't know that they would do that. But a lot of us are speculating that Square Enix is going to swerve us at the Forgotten Capital, and Aerith is going to live because it's the remake and it's a different story, but that she might die at a later point. But that's getting into Game 3 territory, which is a long ways away at this point. We definitely don't need to be speculating on that yet. But actually, if you look at this from a numbers perspective, like I said, Calm to Nibelheim, if you include Cargo Ship and Corel Prison, is 14 locations. The first game had 18 chapters, and pretty much all the locations and set pieces were their own chapter. If we just assume that Part 2 would have 18 chapters as well, 14 locations, 18 chapters, some of the more important locations could have 2 dedicated chapters, I think it could work. Something like Junon, which is a big location, could have 2 chapters, and of course something like Nibelheim, which is a big story moment, could have 2 chapters. But I don't know, man, that's just my thoughts on this whole topic. I feel like we should do a dedicated video talking about this. What do you guys think? How do you think they're going to handle Part 2? I know we don't really know anything about it, but all we can really do right now is speculate on Part 2 since we're not getting a ton of info. How far into the story do you think it's going to go? Do you think we're going to stop somewhere before Nibelheim? Do you think we're going to go up to Nibelheim? Or do you think we're going to go all the way up to the Forgotten Capital and Aerith's death? And to be honest, it could cut back on a couple locations. Something like the Chocobo Farm, while it's its own location on the world map, doesn't need its own dedicated chapter. So you could cram together Calm, Chocobo Farm, and us going up to the Mithril Mines. That could be chapter 1 or 2 or something. Something like Gungaga as well isn't that important of a location or story piece, so you could kind of cram that together with the Cosmo Canyon section or the Gold Saucer section, whatever you want to do. And then something like Bone Village. Bone Village doesn't need its own dedicated chapter either. If you actually do this, you take these kind of smaller locations and put them with another one for one chapter, that actually would equal out from Calm to the Forgotten Capital about 17 locations or chapters. So it could actually work. Anyways, we're getting kind of rambly here at the end. I could probably talk about this forever. Either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't anyone to update more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter at dashingdavid. At my Discord. Links to most social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.